And another thing, asking for financing is not a crime. Yes, so far, everything that's been reported about Flavio doesn't constitute any crime. So much so that not even the press has been able to make such categorical statements in that sense.
I wanted to insist on a point. In this case, Flavio Bolsonaro himself admitted that he went to the banker Daniel Vorcaro after he had already been arrested and was being monitored with an electronic ankle bracelet. And at a time when the entire political environment already knew there were serious suspicions about him, including fraud. At BRB, which is a public bank, there was a recent federal police operation also related to the investment of pension funds. Even in this case, with Flavio going to see the banker after the arrest, do you think he acted correctly?
As far as we know, there was already a previous commitment to finance the film, and what was being requested was what had already been agreed upon earlier for the production of the film. But beyond that, Flavio Bolsonaro signed it. He signed the CPMI to investigate Banco Master in order to find out who is actually involved in this.
He talked about corruption. I think it takes some nerve to talk about corruption during a week like this, when Flavio Bolsonaro, his friend, is caught up in this whole Bolsonaro mess. You're trying to explain yourself. You asked for money to make a movie, and then the money didn't go to the movie. Then it was supposed to finance the simple life of Eduardo Bolsonaro in the United States. So yeah, I think what's missing here is for us to understand a little more about what you think of this Bolsa Master thing, this scandal, because Borcaro financed Nicolas Ferreira's campaign, flew on a private jet. I don't know if he financed your campaign too, since you recently ran as a candidate.
He didn't fund Nicolas Ferreira's campaign. I'm lying.
I needed to understand. So what are you trying to say?
You didn't sign, Mr. Flavio Bolsonaro, a parliamentary inquiry into Banco Master, which 53 senators signed. You didn't sign. If you want to sign now, you will be the 54th.
Anyone who doesn't like and subscribe is a detergent drinker.
I think, first of all, it makes no sense at all to come here and say you're the great inventor of the right wing like that in Brazil. I think it's a complete lack of knowledge of history, as if the right wing had just appeared now in our country and with the internet. And beyond that, I think what we experience today with the left and what we experience with young people is exactly the opposite. And the research shows that I'd like to see those studies he's talking about, but young people, they care about health, they care about public health, which is something the left defends. Young people care about quality education, that's something the left defends. Young people are concerned about good working conditions, and now we've been going through this mobilization, defending the end of the 6 days on, 1 day off work schedule. So I don't really know what he means when he paints such a favorable scenario for right-wing movements. Well, I think that's not enough.
Okay, I'm going to ask a third question, Lucas. If you want to respond to any of Julia's points, feel free. The third question I want to ask both of you, and I'll start with you, Lucas, is what do you see as the future of your movement, your political camp on the right? Yeah, what do you think needs to be corrected in terms of direction, or do you think nothing needs to be corrected? What do you think will be the future of the political right here in Brazil?
Well, first of all, answering my opponent in this debate, just to be clear, we did have major figures on the right in the past. And what happened to those exponents? They were marginalized academically. For example, a hero like Carlos Lacerda, who was the one who overthrew Getulio Vargas, the dictator, he was marginalized in academia, treated by historians as someone whose memory is not worthy of being remembered. Yeah, you have big names like Roberto Campos, and Roberto Campos is also someone who was marginalized by academia, who played an important role in our country, but was marginalized exactly because of this hegemony that I mentioned our country has.
No, I think that first, talking about the future of the left and what we want, I think Brazil is a country where we still need a lot of work. We just went through 4 years of President Lula's government, and he took over a country that had been destroyed by Jair Bolsonaro. We can't forget about the billion-dollar deficit that Bolsonaro left in this country. There are 700,000 people who died during the pandemic because he didn't bother to get vaccines for the population. So, if you look at the public budget, there was no policy to increase the minimum wage. There was no Bolsa Familia. He destroyed Brazil, and I think the work that Lula did this year to rebuild and deliver even more was something really important. And I think that we need throughout this year and throughout Lula's fourth term, which I have faith we will achieve, to re-elect President Lula. Once again, it's about making a government that's even better for our youth so that our young people can study even more. We know that Lucas Pavanato doesn't really like public universities, that he loves to go to universities to complain to the students, but it's an important ground, an important territory for Brazil's development. We want a country that is sovereign, that is well developed, and for that, universities play a fundamental role. Education plays a fundamental role, and we believe that this is the way. We still have a long way to go, right? To overcome what Brazil was, having lived for centuries as a colony. We went through a very harsh situation with slavery, and we still haven't fully recovered from it. So our work is hard, but I see and believe that the Workers' Party, that President Lula, are the ones who present these solutions, who are truly able to think about the country as it really is. To have a real connection with people and to present proposals, to present a concrete solution that puts us on the right path. Now, you asked about the scale 66x1. I think that actually I don't just think, right? I'm more and more convinced that those who say these absurd things about the 66x1 scale have never really worked or have never actually known someone who works on the 66x1 scale. So, because from the worker's point of view, right, from the one who's actually there, you can't take care of your home, you can't be with your family, you can't study, you just stay in this job, which is practically a modern form of servitude. So I think this is something that's really insensitive to the workers, for those who don't support the 6x1 schedule. This is about people's dignity. It's about people having time to be with their families. It's about people being able to actually live beyond just work. And it's already been proven, actually, the 6x1 schedule has already been abolished in several countries. In Germany, you don't have it. You got past this 6x1 schedule debate last century. In Portugal, they were even bolder. It's not the 5x2 schedule, it's 4x4x3, and you have several companies doing this. So it's really easy to come here and talk about economic impact, about this and that, without presenting anything concrete. The truth is that ending the 6x1 schedule is necessary for people, and from an economic standpoint, it makes sense. It can even reduce unemployment, and more than that, people will increasingly know the value of their work and won't accept being oppressed, won't accept just any job or a bad salary. No one wants to work in an abusive situation with a boss. No one wants to work at a bad job. People want good jobs and people deserve good jobs. So ending the 6 days on, 1 day off work schedule and having these better conditions is essential for us to have a better life for people, for young people as a whole.
Okay, Lucas and Julia, I'm going to ask one last question in this segment. And once again, I want to reiterate that in your answers, if you want to counter or argue about what the other person said, feel free to do so. The question is, I'll start with you, Lucas. We're in a country that is undeniably, unequivocally divided today when it comes to electoral and political issues. And I wanted to ask you, as one of the young leaders of the right, do you see any merit, anything positive in the opposing field on the left, and what would that merit be?
Well, first of all, I think division is a positive sign. I think our country being divided is a sign that we are still, in some way, a country that has some freedom. Because countries that don't have division are dictatorial countries like North Korea, like Venezuela. In fact, the president of my colleague here used to make a point of welcoming them here. The dictator Maduro, and he always supported this type of government, even went so far as to finance dictatorships around the world. In those countries that the PT financed, there really is no division. In Brazil, there is, because here we still have some kind of debate, and that's a good sign. Yeah, in terms of what I see as positive in moral and ethical terms on the left, I don't see anything, but I do see it in terms of strategy. They occupied spaces, including the university space, which my opponent here said I don't like, but actually I like the university space a lot. And that's why I fight, so that people who destroy this space, people who have been there for years and years, never graduate, occupy it, destroy it. And now, even in São Paulo, they're making a mess and asking other students to study. That's exactly why I fight. So that these people are no longer in this environment, so that this environment is reserved for those who really need it and who really want to study. Yeah, besides that, the difference we have here in terms of preparation and arguments is really striking, right? My opponent, she simply ignores what I said, so she just starts talking a bunch of generalities without considering anything that was said, saying there was no proposal when I'm actually talking about a proposal. For us to end the 6 days on 1 day off work schedule, the government would cover the cost. It's interesting she mentioned the argument about Portugal. There are studies, she can look them up later. I think she should have researched this before the debate. But studies show that after Portugal ended the 6 days on 1 day off work schedule with a single decision, without the government taking any measures to support businesses, what happened was an increase in unemployment, lower wages, and worse working conditions. And this is documented by studies. So, the example she mentioned is actually an example that shows the way they want to do it is unsustainable. But then, when you suggest that the government, which already collects so much tax from citizens, should bear the cost of this, she's against it. Why? Because she supports the expansion of the state. And the expansion of the state in a country where Brazilians pay 50% in consumption taxes actually means taking resources from the poorest. It actually means condemning the poorest to remain in a position of inferiority without being able to move up in life.
Do you see any merit on the opposing side in this polarized country? What are the positive points you see in the camp Lucas belongs to?
No, I think the first thing is that I honestly get worried when someone comes into this debate and says that a divided, polarized country is something positive. We've seen over these past years families fighting, people who can't even talk to each other anymore because of this kind of far-right attitude of turning people against each other. So I think that's really concerning because while he's trying to stir up controversy for no reason, we're in a situation where everyone needs to do their part for the environment. While he's busy trying to pit people against each other, we're missing out on so many opportunities. So I don't think it's good for people not to like each other. I think it's good for people to be able to solve problems, for people to be capable. That's what democracy is. Democracy isn't people yelling at each other. Like, he goes to the university, goes there to yell at the students, uses his power as a city councilman of São Paulo to go along with the municipal guard and intimidate students. I'd like to see a scene of this councilman at a university opening a book. Whenever this councilman enters a classroom, it's only to yell and intimidate students. That's shameful, and I don't think you were elected for that. I think the people who voted for you wanted you to represent them, not to go around harassing students. I think that's unfortunate. But I also think we needed to, he said this thing, first of all, the economy, like he talked and talked and talked. He talked and talked, saying that Bolsonaro didn't leave a deficit, that it was a success. It's pathetic, especially because we remember how the dollar was. We remember anyway a lot of those other things. And I wanted to remind you, our friend here is from São Paulo too, and Haddad is now a pre-candidate for governor of the state. And he was also, while Minister of Finance, the one who did a tax reform that actually removed taxes. So look how funny things are. Today, those who earn up to 5,000 reais no longer pay income tax. And this, combined with the fact that those who earn more can pay more, is fair taxation, necessary taxation. We can correct inequality. We can fix things that were wrong in our country this way. Not saying there's more taxes, theft, or whatever. That's a really nonsensical debate. And what we've done in these last 4 years, I'm not even talking about the last ones. If we go back to the first Lula administration, we could show even more things and more important things. But what was done was, it was something historic, and it's very important for the economy. It's very important for Brazilians' pocketbooks, and it's very necessary for us to be able to overcome the inequalities in our country. But what happens is that this far-right crowd is doing the bidding of the BBBs, as we call them, right? The banks, the betting companies, and the billionaires. Because for them, it doesn't really matter what happens to the worker if the person is going to gamble, if they're going to spend their salary, if they're going to get into debt and end up buried in debt. They don't care about that. They only care about dividing people. They even go around making speeches, talking in vain about God, talking in vain about these other things. So I think these are very worrying things.